One day, Jesus told his disciples a story to show that they should always pray and never give up. There was a judge in a certain city, he said, who neither feared God nor cared about people. A widow of that city came to him repeatedly, saying, "Give me justice in this dispute with my enemy." The judge ignored her for a while, but finally he said to himself, "I don't fear God or care about people, but this woman is driving me crazy. I'm going to see that she gets justice, because she is wearing me out with her constant requests." Then the Lord said, "Learn a lesson from this unjust judge. Even he rendered a just decision in the end. So don't you think God will surely give justice to his chosen people who cry out to him day and night? Will he keep putting them off? I tell you, he will grant justice to them quickly. But when the Son of Man returns, how many will he find on the earth who have faith?"
Good morning. The very last verse of today's reading records Jesus asking, "But when the Son of Man returns, how many will he find on earth who have faith?" Luke 18, verse 8. In this final comment, Jesus links faith with what he's been talking about in the parable of the widow and the evil judge. He teaches us what faith actually looks like, what characteristics of faith he is looking for in his followers have. Verse 1 of Luke 18 tells us, one day, Jesus told his disciples a story to show that they should always pray and never give up. Luke 18, verse 1. Here, in this verse, and in the parable that follows, Jesus calls all his followers to do two things: to always pray and to never give up. This is what faith in action looks like. The faith Jesus is seeking to be displayed in our lives. There's a magazine cartoon that shows a little fella kneeling beside his bed, ready for his bedtime prayer. He says with some measure of disgust, "Dear God, Uncle Jim still doesn't have a job. My sister still doesn't have a date for the social. Grandma is still feeling sick, and I'm tired of praying for this family and not getting results." Often, we fail in prayer because, like the kid in the cartoon, we lose heart. Our faith is tested and it's found lacking. We become discouraged, and then we no longer pray as we should. It is easy to lose heart in prayer because prayer is often hard work, and we too often approach it glibly. In Colossians 4 verse 12, Paul praised a man named Epaphras, because he was always labouring fervently in prayer. Paul knew that prayer was hard work, that it requires a fervent labour. The theologian Morrison tried to explain why prayer is difficult. He contends it's because in prayer there are three parts of the human being that are engaged. He says there is the understanding, or the mind, by which we work intelligently at this task. There is the heart, or passion, which we labour willingly. There is the will, by which we labour doggedly. It is easy to lose heart in prayer because the devil hates prayer. If prayer was powerless, it'd probably be very easy to pray. It is easy to lose heart in prayer because we're not always convinced of the reality of the power of prayer. In fact, too often, prayer becomes a last resort instead of a first resource in our lives. But we who claim to be Christ followers, we are called to always pray. Jesus did not mean by this that we should always have our knees bent and our eyes closed in prayer, but that we must always be in what is sometimes called the spirit or the attitude of prayer. One of the men in our church shared with me that he would pray when he was riding his bike to work, I, of course, made some flippant comment in response to that about always keeping his eyes open. But for him, when his body was busy in auto drive as he rode his bike, he could connect with God. That's what prayer is about, connecting with God. And we should be seeking connection with God consistently. What praying at all times means is perhaps better described in Ephesians chapter 6, verse 18. And pray in the Spirit on all occasions, with all kinds of prayer and requests. With this in mind, be alert and always keep on praying for all the Lord's people. Ephesians 6:18. It's consciously including God in each situation that we're involved in, being conscious of God's presence and being mindful of what His will would be for us at those times. But in Jesus' parable of the widow and of the evil judge, we are reminded also to bring our needs and our requests before Him, not glibly, but regularly and with a passion, to see Him work in each of those situations. The second part of Jesus' instruction is to never give up. Or as the King James Version puts it, to not lose heart. Have you lost heart and quit praying for a friend, for a family member or a loved one, because after months or years of praying, nothing seems to have happened? George Mueller prayed for two friends for their salvation. He prayed this all of his life. One of them was saved just 2 months before Mueller's death in response to his last sermon. The other, 2 years after Mueller died. Similar to the widow in Jesus' story, do you experience circumstances that just seem to continue to conspire against you? Rather than things getting better, do they just seem to be getting worse? Circumstances that we see are a bit like a parade passing by. We can't see the whole picture, only the part of the parade that's immediately in front of us. For the widow, things looked bleak. She had no husband, no one therefore to stand up for her. She was living in poverty. Things looked bad. We shouldn't allow the circumstances around us to cause us to quit praying, to stop relying on God to provide, and to lose heart. As mentioned earlier, in verse 8, Jesus proceeds to connect prayer with faith. We may not verbally declare our doubt in God, but when we give up on prayer, we are practicing a lack of faith. We're saying that God is unable. We're saying that God is unwilling. There are reasons to keep praying. Firstly, pray because much is at stake. This widow was in a desperate time, poor, unable to pay off associates in order to have her case heard. Without the judge's favourable ruling, she would have been in a hopeless situation. We are hopeless. We just don't realise it. We're in a desperate situation and we often can't see it. Hanging from a ceiling with no ladder, I wouldn't have to convince you to hold on, to keep praying. Keep praying because eternity is at stake. Pray because the answer that you're seeking may just be ahead. How many times did this widow go to the judge? Many times. What if she had quit right before he was going to rule in her favour? This week could be the week that you receive the answer to your prayer. Prayer is important. Pray because persistence is mandated. The point of the story was to encourage Jesus' disciples not to quit praying. Through this journey of persistent prayer, God does several things. He turns our hearts towards His. He prepares you for His work. He builds your spiritual muscle, faith. Pray because you are special to God and because He hears you. This story focused also on the selfish, uncaring judge. This is not a comparison to God our Father. If an unrighteous judge will act so as not to be bothered, how much more will a loving Father react to the cries of his children? If Jesus came today, would he find you faithful in prayer, persistent in prayer? Or would he find you distracted, too distracted to pray, too self-sufficient to pray, too discouraged to pray? What or who is it that God is calling you to begin or to return to praying for today?
I morning, church family and friends. Colin asked me the other day to share some thoughts that I've had or experiences with persistent prayer, and I thought, oh, whoa, what does this mean? Am I that nagging, persistent person that won't give up? Am I a dog chewing a bone until it's ended? And yet I had to come to realise that there are times in my life that I have persistently prayed for some things, specific things, very specific. And some of those prayers have been answered in the way that I was wanting, and some of them have been answered in totally different ways, and I've had to come to trust the Lord in those answers. Having MS as a young person, young 18-year-old, freaked me out. I lost my eyesight, as you know, and I had to really challenge God on that. That wasn't my plan. That wasn't what I wanted to do. It wasn't the person I wanted. And yet I had to come to a point of, in my prayers, changing it to, rather than healing me, but Lord, give me the truth and the honesty to walk this road with MS in the way that you would call me to. I had a beautiful friend, Margie Dennis, and Margie, who shared an example of a persistent prayer that had been answered many years ago when I first met her. She was in her later years of life, and she had been the missionary in Afghanistan, and yet here she was preparing for her wedding, so excited that that long persistent prayer was being answered. I had prayers like that too. I wanted children, I wanted a husband, I wanted someone to accept my MS and allow me to be. And to our excitement, we're nearly up to 30 years of marriage, and we have 2 amazing children. Praying persistently for their partners was one thing we took on very early in their life with our children. Our girls prayed that they would meet the right person for them. God would strengthen them to hold on to their Christian beliefs, and they would find the right person, that they would find a person who would honour them and look after them in the right way. And we're really pleased and excited to be able to say that both our daughters have amazing partners, and we continue to pray for salvation to Jordan and celebrate that Kate and Sam have just recently been married. During my study time at Laidlaw, boy, there were some hard times. There were times that I had to be incredibly persistent to God so I could get through. And you know, those prayers were, Lord, surround me with people that will hold and help and carry me during this time. And my testimony to that is they did. God heard my prayers, God gave me strength, and God answered them with the celebration of my bachelor in the end. Other persistent prayer that I've had recently is from a friend who lives out of Auckland, and there was a really big situation happening in their family, and she invited me to pray for them. And it was strange because I was so far away and removed from what was going, and yet my daily prayer for them was, Lord, just pray that the truth of Jesus would be known into the situation. It went on for months. I didn't have very many contacts with my friend at times, just brief, keep praying, keep holding us. And that's what I did. I can't say I did it every day, but I know that I regularly brought her family and herself into the Lord's presence and prayed that Jesus' righteousness and truth would be upheld. Consequences for what were going on were huge and so incredibly unjust. My testimony to that prayer, of praying persistently, was the excitement a month ago when I got a call to say, everything's been dropped, we don't have to go to court, there's nothing else outstanding. And it was so exciting because that for me really was a persistent prayer that God heard and justice was upheld. I encourage you guys, keep a prayer journal, keep calling out for others to uphold and walk with you in prayer, and trust and know that our Heavenly Father does hear us and cares. Thank you.